in the arms of the
Whoa, 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 whoa,
from this
whoa.
dark cold summer and the endlessness that you feel. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the may you find some comfort here.
Now that I'm without my cock, a part of me is gone. That, plus a string of really bad and expensive auction car purchases, has left me standing with nothing more than just my proverbial rooster in my hand. This could be the end. Unless you guys like, comment, subscribe, follow my Instagram and my Facebook. Alright, I'm kidding, but I'm not. Either way, when things get tough around here, I'm very appreciative to have you guys to rub it in. The comment section has been a bit of a roast session as of late, but I do think it's well deserved. The Dodge Viper is still on the fritz, and we've tried a few interim solutions while we wait for our module to be repaired then cloned, but we've had little success. The Mustang is at my friend Zach, aka Ultimate Rebuild's house, getting a super slick custom paint job, but custom paint jobs take time, and my Ferrari might work pretty darn well, but it still drips a bit of oil, so we might as well leave that in the unfinished category as well. To try and ease the mental burden of these works in progress, I bought the most simple sports car ever made, this Porsche 911S, and unfortunately it came with a very complex problem. Let's face it, with my track record, the chances of this ever being repaired is, well, questionable, especially considering what other Porsche issues we found in recent days, and more on that in a few. But let's not forget that there's a life outside of social media. I'm not interested in creating a problem to create content. I've got plenty of car problems as it is, and I do really enjoy working through them along with you guys. Like, help me out with this one. Over 3 years ago now, I bought the Lemon Lincoln, and it served as a great car, but it has one major problem. Every time I get in it, it seems to be really dirty. Now, I don't actually drive this car, my wife does. All I do is clean it and fill it with $6 a gallon gasoline. And a short time later, I get in and the steering wheel will look like this again. It's all dirty and smudged up. Here are the 3 solutions I've thought of, and let me know which one you like the best. First, I could get a new replacement steering wheel, but those are kind of expensive on this model. Second, I could get rid of my wife, which it turns out this option is way more expensive than a new replacement steering wheel. Or, what seems to be the most sensible option, is I could just clean and protect the steering wheel for several months to come with Leather Honey. I start by mixing a few drops of their leather cleaner in a small pan of water. Swish it around and use a soft brush to loosen the dirt particles on the wheel. Now, while the surface is still wet, take a soft cloth and wipe it all off. Since Leather Honey's cleaner is gentle, it works on multiple other surfaces, including the soft touch material found in most modern cars. And now for the best part, just put a touch of Leather Honey's conditioner on a clean microfiber, which is included in their kit, and wipe it on your leather surface. Remember, a little goes a long way. And in these little crevices, like the edges here, you can literally put the Leather Honey on your finger and just rub it in so you don't get it all over the buttons or the trim or anything like that. I know it sounds crazy to apply it with your bare fingers, but it feels incredible on your hands and leaves them soft without being sticky or oily. You've got to try it. Once it's covered, let it sit for a while if you can. Leather Honey is formulated to sit on the surface of your leather and hydrate each fiber. It won't just evaporate in a few seconds like other products, and this process is exactly what sets it apart and makes its supple finish last 6 months or longer. This steering wheel doesn't just look amazing, it feels amazing and is so satisfying to hold. After the first time I used Leather Honey, I noticed a huge difference in the way it left my car's leather seats feeling. They're just so soft and smooth now. It's unlike anything I've ever used, and they made it super easy to order because you can find it on Amazon and at their own site. I'll link everything down below, and when you use code SAMCRACK20 at checkout, even on Amazon, you're going to get 20% off your own Leather Honey leather care kit. Again, those links are down in the description. Make sure you use that code SAMCRACK20. I've got to give a huge thanks to Leather Honey for sponsoring this video. Now, in case you missed the last video, we got this cheap Porsche 911 at auction, and it was dropped off with a dead battery, but once we finally got it started up, everything seemed pretty amazing. Despite its higher mileage, it drove perfect and seemingly had little issue, except a few minutes into the drive, a low coolant light came on. We searched and tested for leaks for a solid day and found nothing. The loss of coolant is our only symptom here. No coolant mixing in the oil, no water coming out of the tailpipes, no misfires, zero overheating. This car runs awesome. I didn't want to believe that we had any major internal engine problem here, and the only other leak that could happen on this car that you wouldn't find on the outside would be in the interior, and that would be from the heater core. One night I noticed that the carpet on the passenger side was a little damp, so I tore apart the front trunk area and pulled out the core. I didn't notice this at first, but look, the kit came with a bunch of little plugs. So we've got a perfect rubber plug in this end. This is taped off about as best as I can. This is only going to last so long because obviously the moisture from that baby oil vapor will break it down, but we're going to want to take a look at this area. If this thing is going to leak, we should see it pretty quick because it's so small. 1, 2, 3. Let's hold it up. A little bit of smoke is coming out of the fitting. We're not worried about that yet. Just want to look down here. We don't see anything at all, so this is fine. Our wetness issue is likely just with a sunroof drain or with one of the seals around the windshield. At this point, we broke out the engine block tester, and even though I would have never ever guessed there was a top-end failure in this car, it confirmed that there were exhaust gases within the cooling system, which likely means that we have a blown head gasket or a cracked cylinder head. Now, this car was cheap, but not cheap enough to justify throwing a complete engine rebuild job at it, so we need to figure out the condition of our engine. So let's start simple with pulling its plugs and inspecting inside the cylinders. So taking a real good look at everything under here. I mean, the car's got some nice debris on it for being a 140,000 mile car, but there's not a single leak at all. Well, we've got all that coolant splatter right here that we saw, but other than that, everything looks great. Right here, those little metal shields, those thin little metal pieces that run behind the exhaust, that is the cover for our ignition coils and our spark plugs. So we've got to remove those covers and then just kind of wiggle around. It's probably going to be a little bit of fun, and this is why these cars can get really expensive at the Porsche dealer, because just a simple spark plug change is probably at least a few-hour job. So yeah, we're going to take these shields off, pull the plugs, and then hopefully we'll have enough room to snake in our scope camera and see what the condition of those cylinders look like. My hope is that, you know, they're not scored, because if that's the case, this would be a perfect candidate to drop out and do the head gaskets on. Sage is jumping right into the disassembly. You know, the first day that Sage came and helped me, he was grabbing a standard size socket for pretty much every single bolt on a BMW.
Look how far we've came, Sam.
We've come a long way. Now you got to figure out how you're going to snake that ratchet into there and get these couple bolts off. I think you'll be able to figure it out. Just a combination of different extensions, flex heads, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But just, please, no standard size sockets.
Oh, I got you. Not too bad.
Taking a closer look at our spark plugs can clue us into where our problem cylinder might be located. Now, according to the service records, a spark plug job was done very recently, within the last few thousand miles, and all the plugs have consistent wear, except one. Look at all of them side by side and see if you can spot the odd one out. It's not really all that noticeable at first glance, but up close, one of the plugs from the driver's side of the engine has a little bit of cleaner threads than the others. Also on this plug, the electrode is white. Both are signs of it being in contact with a little bit of water or coolant. Now it's time to break out the scope, and we'll be a little bit more vigilant on the driver's side of the engine to see if we can find anything. Now, to get the scope camera up there, it's pretty easy on the first two cylinders, the ones closer to the front of the car, but on the rear one, the exhaust is in the way, so it's kind of a pain in the neck. So I actually have a couple different scope cameras. In this one, you can see how thin the actual probe is on it, and it still has a couple lenses, and I think they even make one with 3 lenses. So depending on the car you work on, you might want to consider before you buy one of these which one you want to buy. The other one I have is really nice, and I think it has a bit better image quality, but it just won't fit because the probe, look, it's almost twice as thick as the one we're currently using. According to the internet, the big deal with these cars is that they have problems with bore scoring. According to the Porsche experts, if you have bore scoring, you should just trash your motor and start over. So let's cross our fingers and hope we don't have any. Oh, what do you know? Look at the first cylinder. It actually has bore scoring. Now, this has nothing to do with our coolant loss, but it adds to the fact that we have ended up with a major auction dud. But how does this problem really affect the way the engine works and runs? Well, hopefully we'll figure that out with a quick compression test in just a moment. Continuing on, 2 out of the 3 cylinders on the passenger side did have scoring. And moving over to the driver's side, we didn't find any scoring, but what we did find on cylinder 2 was some sort of moisture. So cylinder 2 is likely where our breach in the cylinder head or gasket is. Also, it looks like there's a small pool of fluid on top of the piston here, and it's a little bit cleaner. This explains that spark plug. Fuel pump fuse is pulled. We've got the compression tester hooked up to one of the cylinders that had that visible bore scoring, and I'm really anxious to find out how good or how bad the compression number is and compare it to the other cylinders that don't have any issues. Let's find out right now. Got?
About 250.
250 is crazy. That's just the first one we've done, but I guess with that little bit of scoring probably doesn't affect the numbers that much. Well, let's keep going on and then we'll figure that out. Wow, pretty good. This is one of the cylinders that had that bore scoring, and it's at 240 psi. Not bad. All right, so this is the cylinder that's on the driver's side closest to you right now, Sage, closest to the back of the car. 3, 2, 1.
240.
Middle cylinder driver's side.
A little under 240.
Okay, that's still good. Sage, you messed up my shot or what?
Of course I did.
Well, what is it? What's the number?
Oh, it's 250.
250?
250.
Well, what do we got? We got a good engine here.
Yes, sir.
I think now there's going to be some people that are going to say, well, you don't really know how much cylinder leakage is because we got that bore scoring, and they're right. Good news is I got a leak down test around here somewhere. I'm going to find it. Let's hook it up to those cylinders specifically with the bore scoring. We could compare to one of the cylinders that look pretty normal, but the compression numbers are so good, I doubt we're going to find much. All right, the easiest way I found to use these gauges is to put a little bit of pressure in the cylinder. So we've got 20 psi currently. Sage is up top. He went and he just spun it, and you might notice it went from 0 to right under 20. That means he's likely found top dead center, and now we can continue to crank up the pressure in the cylinder and see how much leakage there is. All right, we're at 50 psi, and we have over 40 pounds holding, so that's pretty good so far. Keep going. We really want to see if we can get this all the way up to 100. And at 100 psi, we've got over 90 psi holding. That is under 10 pounds of leakage. That is really, really good, especially considering that cylinder does have the bore scoring. All right, we got 100 pounds in, and we're holding 94. That is super impressive, again, considering that this is the other cylinder with the bore scoring. I'll spare you the time it took to leak down the other cylinders and just let you know each one of them fell within 1 psi of another, and they're really excellent. It's probably why the car felt so good on our initial drive, and I hope this gives a little bit of reassurance to Porsche owners or people considering these 996, 997 cars, because there are horror stories online that maybe if you have a little tick in your engine or there's a little bit of smoke coming from your tailpipe upon startup, that it's the end of the world and these cars are basically trash. Of course, we have bore scoring here, but it's not seeming to affect the performance of the engine at all. So is bore scoring really that big of a deal? I don't know, you tell me. I think it's important to understand what actually causes this bore scoring, and it's quite simple. There's a coating on the pistons themselves, and as time goes on and as the pistons go up and down in the cylinder, well, that friction heats up that coating. The coating starts to flake a bit, and then the flakes of that coating will actually rub up against the cylinder wall, and thus your bore scoring. But you got to imagine at one point all that coating is going to flake up and it's just going to get burned up in the cylinder there. So once it's all gone, again, if your car has good compression, a good leak down test, is it really going to affect the way it performs? There's a lot of people who discovered that their engines have bore scoring. They immediately had them completely torn down and rebuilt to the tune of $20,000+ just because they saw something. And I'm just trying to understand, Was it worth it? If you have firsthand experience with this, definitely let us know what it was like in the comments section. Now, I know I'm speculating quite a bit here, but I think it's important to note a few things about my car, and I think it will help put things in context. So first off, this car is a 2007 model year with 140,000 miles, right under that actually. And it's been religiously serviced at the Porsche dealer its entire life by its one owner. It was even serviced just 1,000 or 2 miles ago, according to the Carfax record. I mean, it is an impeccably serviced car, one that someone would love to buy if they were looking at just the paperwork and not through a scope camera. I find it extremely hard to believe that the bore scoring just showed up in the last, let's say, 1,000 miles or so. Maybe that's why they went and dumped it at a dealership. I would imagine that bore scoring has been there for tens of thousands of miles, as there's a lot of people reporting bore scoring within 30 or 40,000 miles of ownership on these cars. So in my opinion, I don't really care about it. I think there's a few things we could do, like maybe run a cooler thermostat and maybe use some really nice oil additives to keep things really cool and minimize the bore scoring going forward. But it's clearly not causing an issue on my engine, so no need to focus on it. We need to focus on what is causing our loss of coolant, and that is obviously an issue in the top end. We have one of three things: a cracked cylinder head, a bad head gasket, or a warped head or block. Any way you slice this, to repair it professionally is going to be expensive. First off, the car has to be raised in the air and the engine has to be dropped out, and I don't think you could find a single Porsche specialist shop or dealership that would want to just attack the top end of this car. I would think they'd want to sell you either a replacement engine or rebuild the existing engine. Both of those options cost north of $20,000, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense to go either one of those routes, because a little bit over $20,000 is what I paid for the car. The next issue, which we haven't even discussed, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on, is the IMS bearing. This is one of the last model year cars with an IMS bearing, and they're prone, again, to failure. If they fail, they destroy your entire engine, and this one is in the engine, so while you have it opened up, you're probably going to want to replace your IMS bearing. I think for the sake of budget purposes and this car, it would be best off to keep things as simple as possible. So any of the engine repair solutions, even if you're dealing with the top end, it's going to cost you minimum $3,000–$4,000 up to $6,000–$7,000, and that's the cheap repair solution with parts and a lot of DIYing along the way. And there's one other solution I think that's worth mentioning, and that's a bottle of head gasket sealer. It is targeted exactly at the issues that we have: a loss of coolant because you have a cracked or warped head or a bad cylinder head gasket. And I know it's not the most glamorous option, but it's definitely by far the cheapest, and most of these claim to be permanent fixes, and there's a lot of differences between different products. So if maybe we just do have a little crack in the cylinder head, there might be a product out there that could give us several tens of thousands of miles more out of this Porsche engine without even having to drop it out of the car. I know you probably think I'm crazy for even mentioning this solution, but go ahead, let me know what you would decide on down in the comments. Considering this car is roughly about, let's say, a $25,000 car in its as-is condition, and repaired, maybe it's worth about $35,000. Should we take a ruler out, or should we just guess? Now, if you made it through my dissertation on Porsche engines, I really want to thank you. It might sound boring, but I think just looking into the basics is always necessary when you're faced with the several $1,000 repair bill. Either way, we need to get more efficient in the way we attack our car repairs here, and that starts with a lift. That's why we're drilling into the concrete here in the barn. The good news is we found over 4 1/4 inches of depth, which means we'll be good to get a 2-post lift installed right here. The even better news is we've ordered the lift. Whether or not this Porsche actually gets fixed on the lift will always depend on whether it makes good fiscal sense to do so, like with all my projects. Either way, if you're considering a decade-old Porsche, just go get a Corvette. Even at near 260,000 miles, this car has 50 more horsepower, costs a third of the price, and I'm actually able to drive it without worry. The only thing it can't do that a 911 can is drive like a Porsche. Now, I've got to go run and find out who's got a sale on head gasket sealer. Make sure you're following along on Instagram, where I'll be posting updates to the 911 and Viper there before anything goes live here on YouTube. And be sure to hit that like button if you feel that you learned something today. I can't thank each and every one of you enough for watching. I'll catch you really soon.